You know, here at CSL, we have 7 core values that help to guide everything we say and do in our spiritual practice. Those core values are love, healing, oneness, abundance, spiritual growth, service, and diversity. Today we're focusing on diversity, and I had a wonderfully rich experience of diversity this week. I went to Little Havana for the first time since moving to southern Florida and got to experience a different culture and see streets full of diverse people. And as I was looking around, enjoying that incredible diversity, I realized that, especially for people like me, diverse experiences don't seek us out. We have to seek them out. We have to go to where the diversity is. We have to make a conscious, intentional effort to cultivate that in our lives and in our experience. And so wherever you are in your life, whatever the diversity is or is not that is around you on a daily basis, seek out an experience of diversity this week. Find some way to get outside of your norm so you can begin to see how wonderful the richness of a diverse experience is and what joy it can bring to your life. We also have an opportunity coming up to explore diversity a little bit deeper, so make sure if you are online, you stay after service to hear about that announcement. So thank you all for being part of this diverse spiritual community and helping to ensure that our level of diversity continues to grow and expand in the richness of life that is so diverse as it is. Thank you so much. In her chapter entitled The Reckoning, in our book of the month, Rising Strong by Brene Brown, she says this: "You either walk into your story and own your truth, or you live outside your story hustling for your worthiness." Who among us used to hustle for their worthiness? Just me? Who from time to time still hustles for our worthiness? Who doesn't want to do that anymore? Then, friends, we have got to rise strong, look our stories in the face, and reckon with them. We often don't do that, however, because it's a lot of work to reckon with our stories. And it's not something we do just once. We'll reckon with the same story over and over and over again once we start this work, and we know that reckoning with our stories is going to take a lot of intention, a lot of fortitude, a lot of willingness to experience deep and challenging emotions, a lot of willingness to let go of things we've carried around for so much of our life, and that seems like a lot, so we don't do it. But we forget how much hustling for our worthiness costs. We're so used to doing it that we don't realize how much energy we're wasting, how much joy we're spending on the hustle for our worthiness. We also tend to not reckon with our stories very often because reckoning seems like a big, scary thing, right? The day of reckoning is upon us, so destroy everything, and it's going to be the big, terrible, awful, right? But when we look at what reckoning really means, a reckoning is simply taking stock. It's looking at where we are, how we got there, and the direction that we're going to see if that's the direction we want to continue in, and if not, setting a new course. Reckoning is simply acknowledging what is. And here's the thing, friends, we're reckoning with our stories about what happened. We're not actually reckoning with the things that actually happened. Those happened in the past. Reckoning with them is not going to do anything for us. It's the stories we tell ourselves about the things that actually happened that we need to reckon with. Some of the time. Some of the time it's stories we tell ourselves about things that never actually happened that we have to reckon with. You ever have something happen where something like somebody comes up to you and says, "You will never believe what so-and-so said." And then you take that and you're like, "I can't believe they said that about me." And you go off down this road about all the terrible, awful things that why would they do such a horrible thing for me? And you get so worked up in this story about what you were told they said about you until you go and confront them and they say, wait, I never said that. No, they misunderstood. This is what I said. You found that you had made up a story about something that didn't actually happen that put you in a state of upset. But when you got the truth about what it was, you realized you were off base. Of course, there is a lot of the stories that we tell ourselves that are based on things that actually happened. That can make it more challenging to reckon with them, make them feel more real, more stuck. But we can always tell a new story. We can always flip the script on the stories we tell ourselves about the events that happen in our lives and get a new experience. There is a poem by a poet named Abdullah Shoaib called Pretty Ugly, and it does a wonderful job of demonstrating flipping the script on our stories. But fair warning, it can be a little challenging at the beginning. It goes like this. I'm very ugly, so don't try to convince me that I'm a beautiful person, because at the end of the day, I hate myself in every single way. And I'm not going to lie to myself by saying there is beauty inside of me that matters, so rest assured, I will remind myself that I am a worthless, terrible person. And nothing you say will make me believe that I still deserve love, because no matter what, I am not good enough to be loved. And I am in no position to believe that beauty does exist within me, because whenever I look in the mirror, I always think, am I as ugly as people say? I've told myself that story. Have you? It's a hard story. It's a hard story to live in. But what if we flip the script? What if we read it backwards? Am I as ugly as people say? Because whenever I look in the mirror, I always think beauty does exist within me. And I'm in no position to believe that I am not good enough to be loved, because no matter what, I still deserve love. And nothing you say will make me believe that I am a worthless, terrible person. So rest assured, I will remind myself that there is beauty inside of me that matters. And I'm not going to lie to myself by saying I hate myself in every single way, because at the end of the day, I am a very beautiful person. So don't try to convince me that I'm very ugly. Exact same words, very different story. One has not been reckoned with and leaves us hustling for our worthiness, believing that we are ugly. The other has been, and is a testament that worthiness is inherent in who we are. It's all just a story. In fact, everything that we tell ourselves is a story. We have never actually experienced anything in the physical world the way it actually is, because everything that we experience has to be filtered through our own consciousness. So everything is colored by that lens. We will never, ever experience something in the world the way it is. Everything is a story. Now, before you think, Ben, it's not very kind to say that all of the pain and all of the tragedy and all of the struggle that I've had in my life is just based on some story that I've told myself. That's not what this is about. I've told myself these stories. I've lived in that hell. I go back and visit from time to time. Unfortunately, it's not a good vacation spot. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not about demeaning or undercutting the intensity of the experiences that we've had, but calling out our stories as our stories helps to remind us that we can change them, that we're not stuck in that feeling. It's not about undercutting our stories. Brené Brown says this: our job is not to deny the story, but to defy the ending. We don't need to deny the fact that we've been telling ourselves stories that don't serve us. We just need to deny the ending of that story by reckoning with it and having a new story to tell. Of course, it can be more challenging than just reading a poem backwards when it's our own lives to flip the script on our stories. Of course, Brené has some good suggestions. She says that we've got two things to do in reckoning with our stories. The first is to reckon with our emotion, and the second is to get curious. Here's what she has to say. The opposite of recognizing that we're feeling something is denying our emotions. The opposite of being curious is disengaging. When we deny our stories and disengage from tough emotions, they don't go away. Instead, they own us. They define us. So we got to reckon with our emotions. Now remember, reckoning is simply acknowledging what is. It's saying, I am in an emotional experience, and acknowledging that we're having that emotional experience so we can do something with it. Too often, though, we don't actually stop and acknowledge the emotions. We put them off and go straight to a self-judgment. It might be something like, oh man, I am such a screw-up, instead of, I made a mistake, and I'm a little embarrassed about that mistake and afraid of what might happen as a result. I'm a screw-up is a story that hasn't been reckoned with. I'm a screw-up says the only thing I can do is put on a false front and hustle for my worthiness so that you don't see that I'm a screw-up because I've bought into this story. And no matter how hard I hustle for my worthiness behind this false front that I've put up from a place of believing that I'm a screw-up, I know you're never going to buy it. Because we can always tell when there's some inauthenticity, right? Even if you can't quite put words on it, you've known when you've been with somebody who has been trying to convince you that they're worthy from a place of not believing that they are. Not only does it cost so much, but it doesn't really work. If we reckon with the story, however, and say, the truth is, I'm not a screw-up, I made a mistake, and I'm a little embarrassed about it and afraid of what might happen, then from a place of knowing our inherent worth, we can simply go and address the mistake. Hey guys, I didn't really intend for this to happen, but here's the mistake I made, let's address it, right? By simply doing that, you are demonstrating more worthiness than you will ever get somebody to believe, standing behind a false front, believing you're a screw-up and hustling for worthiness. Simply by owning your mistakes, by acknowledging what is and moving forward, you not only help to demonstrate worthiness, but if there is fear and embarrassment in your experience, simply owning it helps to undercut that. So we can then bring to bear the rest of our spiritual practices, our affirmations, our prayer, our meditation, our introspection, whatever spiritual practice works for you to help in dealing with those challenging emotions. Of course, in the midst of an extreme emotional upset, it can be challenging to list out every single emotion that's wrapped up in that upheaval. We don't actually have to do that, though. Brené Brown says this: the good news is that in reckoning, we don't have to pinpoint the emotion accurately. We just need to recognize that we are feeling something. We just need to recognize we're feeling something. I am having an intense emotional experience. Simply that can give us a little bit of space from the emotional experience, because what does it do? It acknowledges first, I am what? Having an intense emotional experience. If you remember from a few weeks ago, we talked about this introspection of saying, is this something that I am experiencing? Is this something I can call out in the physical world, or is it me? And if I can describe it, if I can point to it, I know that it's not the truth about who and what I am. But if I say I am having an intense emotional experience, I know that I am the reality, and the intense emotional experience is just something I'm having. It's not me. It doesn't overwhelm me. It doesn't encompass me. It's something I am having, and something that I can choose to not have if I am willing to do the work. When we remind ourselves that I am, and the experience is something I am having, we get a little bit of distance from it. Go ahead and touch your heart center and just proclaim, I am. There's no argument there, right? Nothing to argue, nothing to struggle for. It's simply a statement of being, I am. I am having an intense emotional experience. Sometimes it takes more than just that to get enough space from the intensity to be able to get curious, which is the second step Brené suggests. Well, she's got a great technique for that too, engage in some conscious breathing. In the book, she calls it tactical breathing. It's also called breathing in a box. Simply breathing in for a count of 4, deep from your diaphragm, pulling air through your lungs for a count of 4, holding that for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 4, and then holding for a count of 4 before starting the breath cycle again. You know how everybody says if you're upset, you should stop and count to 10? You should stop and do 10 breath cycles. If you did that and were able to really focus on 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and not go back to the ruminating about the experience through 10 breath cycles, you actually would have counted to 160, just 4 at a time, and would have gotten a lot of distance from that emotional upset. You could even throw an affirmation on it instead of counting to 4. I am safe and loved. 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 Do some conscious breathing on the affirmation of I am safe and loved, and see how much space you can get from the emotional upset, recognizing that I am not the emotional upset. From there we can get curious, because we can ask ourselves any question we want and we can get an answer to that question. So it's good to pay attention to the types of questions we're asking. If we ask ourselves, why am I such a screw-up? We will find every single answer there is out there as to why we are such a screw-up. If we ask ourselves, what are the emotions that I'm feeling in this intense emotional state that I've gotten a little bit of separation from, we'll start to be able to answer that question. What are these emotions telling me? What is happening here that I am not understanding? What information could I get about what's happening that might completely change my experience? What story am I telling myself, and is that a story I want to continue telling myself? And friends, good news, I can answer that question for you. If you're in the midst of this work, it is not a story you want to continue telling yourself, right? What story do I want to tell myself instead? How can I use this to affirm my worth rather than hustle for it? How can I use this to let it go and to be who I truly am inside? Our stories are self-fulfilling prophecies, whether it's a story of worthiness or a story of worthlessness. And if we continue to tell ourselves those stories, especially those that bring us feelings of anger and upset and emotional overwhelm, we will continue to have those experiences. Reckoning with our stories isn't easy, but there's also a story we tell ourselves about reckoning with our stories that we could flip the script on. If I reckon with these stories that I've been carrying around about myself for my entire life, and I decide to let go of them, granted they're painful, granted it's a challenge because I have to hustle for my worthiness, but if I were to let them go, then I wouldn't know who I was anymore, and oh my God, what would happen out there in the world if I actually had to recreate myself and find a new version of myself? And there's so much fear that can come from the terra incognita, the uncharted territory. And if we tell our story about the fear of reckoning with our stories, rather than what's on the other side of them, so you might have to let go of the story you've told about yourself for your entire life. If that's a story that leaves you hustling for your worthiness, don't you want to let go of that story anyway? Isn't the unknown worth discovering how much joy you've been wasting in hustling for worthiness that is already yours, that has been yours since the beginning? It's a challenge to hustle for our worthiness. It's a challenge to reckon with our stories. But friends, I've hustled for my worthiness for far too long. And so have you. So it's time to reckon with those stories. It takes an interesting type of person to reckon with our stories. This is what Brene says about that type of person. She says, people who wade into discomfort and vulnerability and tell the truth about their stories are the real badasses. And so, you amazing, wonderful, powerful badasses, let the reckoning begin. Namaste. So we have an opportunity now to take this idea of reckoning with our stories into a spiritual practice of meditation and deep listening. So I invite you to find yourself comfortable in your chair, allow your eyes to close, and let the music bring you to a focus that is within. There is a truth about us that transcends any story. It is a truth of love, a truth of worthiness, a truth that life itself, whatever the grand mystery of life is, decided to birth itself as us. There is nothing we could do to deserve being born. There is nothing we could do to deserve life expressing as us. So there must be an inherent worth, an inherent value in who we are. There must be love as who we are. Why else would life birth itself as us, other than because it loved itself so much that it wanted to find the unique, diverse expression of itself as us? There is a truth of peace in the core of our being. Because life never tarries with yesterday, and life is never afraid of the future. Life is simply living the moment, enjoying the moment, finding all of the grandeur and the mystery all around it in the moment. So regardless of our stories, love, worth, peace are always true. And so let's take a moment in the silence to commune with the love, the worth, and the peace that life demonstrates through and as us. Breathing in the love, the peace, the worthiness. Exhaling the stories that no longer serve. Breathing into this moment in gratitude for this moment, in gratitude for this life. We begin to find ourselves coming back into our bodies, back into the room, knowing that regardless of the stories we have told, all is well, and all will continue to be well. So when you are ready with a deep inhale of peace and love and worth, allow your eyes to open and be here now.
I breathe out, I breathe in, I am still, I go within. When I quiet my mind, in the stillness I find. Spirit meets me there, Spirit meets me there.
We all have an affirmation that we like to share at the end of service. You have that with you, so let's go ahead and say that together. I say a hearty yes to the adventure of my life. And so turning within to that place where life is living us, we know that the yes is there. Whatever the adventure is, yes is our internal calling. We are guided, guarded, directed, and protected in everything that we say, think, feel, and do by that same presence of life that birthed us. And so whatever stories we need to reckon with, we have everything we need to reckon with them. In fact, we have earned the right to reckon with those stories and to put them down and start telling a new, more inspiring, enlivening story. And all of life supports us in this. And so whatever is ours to do in this week and going forward and reckoning with our stories and creating our life anew, everything in the universe says yes to the adventure of our life. And we say yes in return, knowing it is good and very good. And in gratitude for all of this, I unleash it into the law, knowing it is done. And so it is. Thank you so much for being here with us online and in the house. Bid on silent auction items and come back next week, 10:30 Eastern Time. Thank you so much, CSL. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you for watching, and thanks for supporting CSL. If you'd like to know more about us, check us out on our website or social media. Blessings.